Welcome back to 7th Grade Mustache. On today's episode, we'll be speaking about altitude sickness. The people mentioned in this episode are suffering from altitude sickness. They begin life poor and rise to a much higher station in life. The rise happens quickly and they become sick with power, abusing and exploiting other people for their own gain. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. That famous saying means a person will accumulate power, and in the process, they lose their sense of morality, or it is tested, or it is decreased. The idea originates with the British Lord John Emmerich Acton in a series of letters to Bishop Mandell Creighton in 1887. Lord Acton ruminated on the idea that kings and popes should be judged by the same laws as the common man. Absolute monarchies are those in which all power is given to the king. Caesar Borgia, Napoleon, Saddam Hussein, and George Bush Jr. are names that come to mind. So much criminal behavior is given a pass because of royal status, appointment, or executive office. The listeners among you have seen the lies blur between leader and war criminal. The bald-ass lies told to pacify a sedentary public and shape public perception. Let's hammer down into the cause of corruption from such lofty heights. It has been said, discipline is what you do when no one is watching. It starts small with something like simple shoplifting, but you can extrapolate that into embezzling billions of dollars from Americans' retirement funds. A kleptocracy. It is a government where a small group within the government creates mechanisms to enrich themselves from the resources belonging to the people they represent. We are living in a kleptocracy right now. General Smedley Butler, he wrote about Wall Street bankers and the military in his 1933 speech in his 1935 book, War is a Racket. He says, war is just a racket. A racket is best described, I believe, as something that is not what it seems to the majority of all people. Only a small inside group knows what it is about. It is conducted for the benefit of the very few at the expense of the masses. I believe in adequate defense at the coastline and nothing else. If a nation comes over here to fight, then we'll fight. The trouble with America is that when the dollar only earns 6% over here, then it gets restless and goes overseas to get 100%. Then the flag follows the dollar, and the soldiers follow the flag. I wouldn't go to war again as I have done to protect some lousy investment bankers. There are only two things we should fight for. One is the defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. War, for any other reason, is simply a racket. There isn't a trick in the racketeering bag that the military gang is blind to. It has its fingermen to point out the enemies. It has its muscle men to destroy enemies. And it has its brain men to plan war preparations. And a big boss, super nationalistic capitalism mechanism. It may seem odd for me, a military man, to adopt such a comparison. Truthfulness compels me to. I spent 33 years and 4 months in active military service as a member of this country's most agile military force, the Marine Corps. I served in all the commissioned ranks from second lieutenant to major general. All during that period, I spent most of my time being a high-class muscle man for big business, for Wall Street, and for the bankers. In short, I was a racketeer and a gangster for capitalism. General Smedley Butler gave a speech to the 1932 Bonus March. World War I veterans had come home to Washington, D.C. to demand Congress give them their promised back pay, only to have veterans camp burned down by the U.S. Army days later. So there you have several examples of how this group of people who have this altitude sickness turn around and create a kleptocracy and steal money from the common man.
You don't even talk about the kleptocracy, which is very profound. I'm going to talk about my career, my job, and I work for a company where we still have a union, but it's being attacked. And one way they do that is they took a bunch of union jobs, made them management jobs. But then what they to fill the jobs, they hired all these former union people to do the job. By doing that, most of those people they're hiring are people that were doing the job before or new hires who don't want to get furloughed or get fired in the coming months. So now their loyalty is no longer to the union, it's to the company. They'll do anything to keep those jobs. Moral compass just be damned. Because like what you were saying earlier, I was going to say your moral compass becomes damaged in these situations. And you end up betraying yourself by not playing to your strength, which is our unity. The common man, when they unite, they can control everything. But what you do, you give success and power to one or two, or to the few, and then all of a sudden they don't want to go back to being broke. That's why this whole altitude sickness, what they're saying is you're afraid of falling. Now, you've seen a lot of successful people. They go broke 3 or 4 times, bankrupt, new company. They don't trip about it. But the ones who think that they're special, or the ones that think that they were chosen for other reasons, they don't ever want to fall. They're terrified of falling. I'm afraid of falling too. I don't want to go back to zero. I get it. But there are some times when you are actually playing yourself towards the middle, and you're not, and what you're doing is actually hurting yourself, and it hurts others too. But that whole idea of just of elevating a few, again, that's the same game that Roscoe just pointed out in the black community. They give success to 3 or 4 as examples. See, if you're a good Negro, you can get this. And then that person doesn't give back, doesn't help, doesn't elevate other people. They just sit there and say stuff like, oh, I'm Jay-Z, I'm special because I'm here. And not special because of the hard work and whatever else, or you haven't brought enough people with you. Or you just tell people that, hey, you can be special too if you sell out hard enough. That kind of thing. So, yeah, this altitude sickness, that's some real shit. And the whole military complex that Smedley was talking about, we see it all the time. He's just man enough to recognize that he wasn't fighting for his country. He was fighting for some investment bankers, and that that wasn't what the real conflict was about. That shit.
There have been 2 members of the Bush family that have been presidents. A substantial portion of the Bush family fortune was derived from extensive business relations over many years between the Nazis and the family patriarch Prescott Bush. In 1926, Prescott Bush became vice president of W.A. Harriman and Company. Soon afterward, the company expanded into the Soviet Union. After negotiations with Leon Trotsky, Harriman obtained a contract to mine manganese. In 1927, the company was criticized for its support of totalitarian governments in Italy and the Soviet Union. George Herbert Walker, the father of the first President Bush, wrote to W.A. Harriman, "The suggestion that we withdraw from Russia smacks somewhat of the impertinent. I think we have drawn our line and we should stick to it." It means this guy is doubling down on his position. Prescott Bush was appointed as director of the Harriman 15th Corporation. This, in turn, controlled Consolidated Steel Corporation that owned 1/3 of a complex of steel making, coal mining, and zinc mining activities in Germany and Poland. He began doing business with a man named Frederick Flick. Flick was a leading financial supporter of the Nazi Party. In the 1930s, he donated over 7 million Deutschmarks to the party. You would also see different dealings with people who would then do business with Prescott Bush. But this goes on, and you see they are punished, or what appears to be a slap on the wrist by the United States government, but not really. On the 20th of October 1942, the U.S. government seized the assets of Union Banking Corporation. The shares of the bank were owned by Prescott Bush and E. Roland Harriman, and a couple members of the Nazi Party. Under the Trading with the Enemy Act, the government took over Union Banking Corporation and Silesian American Steel Corporation, a company that Prescott Bush had managed along with his father-in-law, George Herbert Walker. Here is another part of the military-industrial complex that Smedley Butler was talking about. But these people, essentially, they're pirates. And pirates would rather hang around with other pirates because they have the same altitude sickness. But let's look at religion for a moment. Pope Alexander VI was also known as Rodrigo de Borgia, of the famous Borgia family. Rodrigo Borgia bribed his way to the top and used his position to enrich his friends and family. He was head of the Catholic Church and ruler of the Papal States from August 11th, 1492, until his death in 1503. Pope Alexander VI did everything from selling the church offices to hiring 50 prostitutes in one night to secure his place as history's dirtiest pope. It is important to realize the Church of Jesus Christ that was founded by the apostles was taken over by the Church of Rome and is now what people recognize as Catholicism today. One thing to understand is that purgatory is not in Scripture. Purgatory does not exist. It was created as a diversion to scare people who went against the Catholic Church.
Also use it to scare people into donating, paying tithes. This is a place you go. It's not as bad.
And it's supposedly usury. So the Catholic Church is founded on situational ethics, characterized by substituting human standards for the Word of God. That goes against the apostles and the Church of Jesus Christ. Pope Alexander VI executed the Catholic monk Savonarola, who attempted to clean up the church corruption. Pico della Mirandola was condemned when he published his Kabbalistic thesis, attempting to enter the Kabbalah into the teachings of the Catholic Church. Pope Alexander VI ruled in favor of Pico della Mirandola, stating that the Kabbalah is suitable for the study by the Catholic Church hierarchy. Kabbalah is magic. It's Jewish magic. So let's just put it out there so people are real clear about that shit.
You hear that term all the time, cabal.
It's fallen angel information and knowledge.
Well, allegedly, Madonna is a part of the cabal, or they have some special term for some special Jewish shit.
Kabbalah. It's the Kabbalah.
Yeah, but she has another term they add to it. And
which is funny because, like, the word cabal is a secret society, which probably comes from that. Johannes Reuchlin taught a Kabbalistic Catholicism. He taught that the devil was morally neutral. He was a scholar of Greek and Hebrew, whose work also took him to modern-day Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and France. Switzerland, the area that Khazarians passed through on their way to Russia. The teachings of Johannes Reuchlin was an inspiration for Eliphas Levi. In 1861, he printed the first widely distributed image of the Baphomet on his book, Transcendental Magic, Its Doctrine and Ritual. Levi and his teachings were protected by the Catholic Church due to the curiosity of Pope Pius IX. Pope Leo X protected banks and allowed usury, which was considered a sin not long before this, in 1515, to become a common practice. Compound interest then took hold in the Western world, the idea of making money from money. Debt became essential to fighting wars, which both monarchs and the Pope needed to finance.
The reason this usury thing is so important is because the Bible talks against Christians charging other Christians usury. The Quran talks against Muslims charging other Muslims usury. It's wrong. But then you have this group that's not quite either, which are these Jewish, not Jews, Jewish. So what they did was, okay, well, we'll run the banking industry and we'll charge usury because our scripture, because you got to remember, they only do the Torah, they only do the first 13 books of the Bible, they got a bunch of other little Talmud stuff they make up. We make it morally ambiguous to charge usury. So they decided to take over that industry. And this is something that whenever we try to explain to people that everybody runs an industry. Well, their industry was banking and also rackets and gangster and stuff like that. So these Jewish people are doing that, and they're charging everybody else usury. And they go through these countries, and after a while, they just basically ransack the country, take advantage of the poor people. And at some point, the government's like, "Hey, we want y'all to go," and they've been kicked out of all these different nations. We all know what famously happened in Germany, but that happened in several other countries along the way. That these Khazarians, as my brother put it, were getting kicked out of all these different countries in Europe because they would get there, they would take over the banking, they would screw people over, and they just made the poor people poor, and they would pay the rich a little bit of money, just to turn a blind eye. And so that's why I said whenever you deal with these different situations, the moral compass becomes damaged. And as my brother put it, this altitude sickness, they get so far up that they're afraid of falling. I just sent you a video about Will Smith, and he was saying some similar shit. He said, everybody says that when you hit rock bottom, that's when you change. He said there's a flip side to that. He said, I call it the cliff top, where you get so high, and he said your goal is to find yourself, and you can't find yourself because you're so high, you're so successful, you're not worried about money, you're not worried about achieving stuff. Your family's good, and you would think that's at that point that you would be able to be happy, and it's just the opposite. These people are so obsessed with monetary gain and controlling other people and being untouchable and being morally ambiguous to where, because I'm so far up, I can do whatever I want, but you can't. That once they get there, they don't find themselves, and all they do is destruction. There's a wake of destruction, and since they can't see beneath them, and as you put earlier, since these kings and these popes aren't judged by the same ruler. When I say ruler, I don't mean person in charge. I mean ruler, the same stick, the same measurement as people beneath them. They become lost, and they do nothing but damage, and they, do a lot of everything from human sacrifice to sexual debauchery and all these different things, and do a lot of damage. And then if you and remember, what did old boy say? He said, who's in charge by who you cannot speak against, and you're not even allowed to talk against them. If you say anything, you're anti-Semitic. But if I know there's some people out there trying to make a point, but one of the biggest points is, how come you can say this about a black person, but you can't say this about a Jewish person?
But what's funny? The episode that we put out recently, the Shadow Biome, has a disclaimer that YouTube put at the top of the descriptor. I didn't put it on there. Because we talked about reptilians, they put this disclaimer on there that says reptilians are a fictitious race of people.
So why do they feel comfortable doing that? Look, so clearly, if I can't talk about and they're fictitious, why did you need to put something there? Maybe they're not.
Why do you gotta feel like you gotta just nerf the whole conversation by putting that on there?
Why do you feel that you have to castrate us verbally? Why do you feel that you need to take away any power?
What's crazy is that I put 3 words in the descriptor, and none of them were that word. So that means they scan the audio, listening for that word. Look,
I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but one of the funniest things was when he took over Twitter, when he bought Twitter. Remember, he fired like 63% or 40% of the people or some crazy. And I'm like, see, that guy's a piece of crap. He's cutting jobs. But when you find out who he fired, he fired a bunch of censors. These were people that were on the payroll that just sat there and got paid to listen to everybody's content and report or remove content that they deemed, it was basic censorship. And I'm like, I hate the guy, but I gotta agree with him on that. You got a lot of people on your payroll that are they're not doing God's work. That's for damn sure. They're doing the work of the devil. And I get it. It's for a paycheck and whatever else, but you got to be careful. Whenever you talk about those Nuremberg trials and how many of those Nazis said they were just following orders, it's easy for people to follow orders when they're doing what they want to do. When they want to beat up on somebody, when they want to rape somebody, when they want to be bullies or whatever, I was following orders. Yeah, no, you was following orders you wanted to follow. But following orders is not an excuse. Like, clearly, that's not an excuse for doing bad stuff, and people need to take that into consideration. You know right from wrong. There are some things that you know, like, this just doesn't sit right with my soul. I can't do this. But look,
All
there's
right, so
no excuse for wrong.
I'm going to restate. I'm going to repeat the opening statement for the sake of clarity. In this episode, we discuss people who are suffering from altitude sickness. They begin life poor and rise to a much higher station in life. The rise happens quickly. They become sick with power and abusing and exploiting other people for their own gain. In modern times, the public is given entertainment to shift their focus away from political schemes and military plunder. The kingmakers of the film and music industries have been on trial for their own abuses of power. Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Clive Davis, Sean Puffy Combs. The first three are Jewish guys. The last one's a black dude. Harvey Weinstein represented the last visible symbol of the abusive Hollywood studio system. He would trade sex and humiliation rituals for starring roles for actresses in big-budget movies. The Me Too movement signaled the downfall of Harvey Weinstein. Then an about-face toward political correctness in Hollywood businesses changed all that. Jeffrey Epstein was not connected directly to the entertainment industry, but his political influence attracted entertainers that wanted to network with the political elite. He would invite famous people to his island retreat and lure them into sexual situations with underage prostitutes. All of it was part of a larger sexual blackmail mechanism created by the Mossad intelligence agency. Epstein was simply the front man, while Ghislaine Maxwell and her father controlled the show. And you would often see these photographs of these celebrities, black celebrities, white celebrities, with Bill Clinton and all these people, and then you would see this weird Jewish guy in the photo somewhere. That was Jeffrey Epstein. Chris Tucker even talked about how, he got on a private plane with Bill Clinton and went to Africa. That plane belonged to Jeffrey Epstein.
And remember, when he asked the question, Chris tells everybody it was a fundraising event. That's how they get embedded. They become Puff Daddy became. They're either donating money or throwing parties. And then everybody's like, oh, they're harmless. No, these motherfuckers are not harmless. They are sick fucking individuals. Do not ever downplay how disgusting they are. Don't downplay that shit.
All you got to do is look at the Clinton kill list, the Clinton body count, and you will see how fucked up these people are. How these people that you think are your librarian or somebody that you respect or look up to are evil, dark arts worshipers. That's right. Clive Davis learned about using vice and compromise as leverage early in his career as a music executive. That was a time when the Italian and Jewish mafias were controlling a large portion of the music industry. And you have all these stories from black musicians who would talk about how the mob was involved in everything that they were doing. There was always some type of talk about this. You would hear it, and it was always hearsay, but it wasn't just one person talking about it. There's 10, 15, 20 musicians talking about this. And payola was a big part of that. Payola is the practice of paying radio stations to play music over and over and over to create a narrative. That is what these people are good at doing, is creating narratives. Then you fold in the intelligence agencies that want to steer an entire race of people in a certain direction. And they want to keep black people in a state of perpetual adolescence, behaving like adolescent teenagers.
They want to compromise a lot of people. They're compromising an entire industry to where everybody, okay, well, I got to get that way is okay. Or the other part, Ice-T had said it years ago. He said, once you get in the music industry, you find out that you're being pimped. So it's your job to start pimping somebody else. That is a terrible fucking way to think. That's the same thing when you hear about these child molesters. Well, I was molested, so I became a molester. That does not justify it. Now, it's one. It's okay to start a business. It's okay to bring people into the fold, and you should be trying to fix the industry, not be a part of it, not exploit it, not do what was done to you to somebody else. That does not justify your actions. That don't justify anything. Well, it was done to me. Yeah, you were molested, so hurt people, hurt more people. That's not a good way to be. That's something that needs to be fixed in all these situations. You should not be trying. When I was in college, my professor told me, he said, "Hey, he said, duct tape. You must understand this. We're all monkeys in a tree, and shit flows down." What he's saying is that the way this hierarchy is set up, that you're shitting on somebody else. Because you're being shit on, you need to shit on somebody else. And the only monkey not being shit on is the top monkey. So either you want to be the top monkey, or you want to just find more people to shit on. And I'm like, goddamn, thanks, Doc. But that's the mentality of these people. That's the mentality of, I was done wrong, so I should do somebody else wrong. Not fight back, not correct the action. I dealt with that stuff recently in a union situation where there's a whole department of people being eliminated. I'm no longer in the union, and they're still blaming me. And I'm like, at what point do you blame the person that actually did it to you? You're so afraid of the guy on top of you that you won't even say his fucking name, knowing he's the one who did this to you. Instead, you'd rather ostracize your peer, the one who actually protected you. And so
that's some serious gaslighting right there.
Oh my God! but what makes this abuse so complete is that you will fall in love with the person oppressing you. You will desire to be your oppressor. You will desire to oppress other people. Instead of, you know what, let's cure the oppression and everybody unite and we hold them accountable. And nope, that's not good enough. Because even then, part of the problem is you don't want people even with you. You still want to be higher than those people. My desire is not to be higher than anybody. My desire is to bring everybody with me. That is what makes me a good leader. My desire is like, hey, and Roscoe will tell you, I'm like, hey, man, hey, let's go do this. Or Roscoe come with a business idea. Okay, let's go that direction. Because we've been elevating since we was in fucking first grade and met each other. And our goal is for both of us to get higher. Not, hey, man, I'm looking down on you. But you my boy, so I'm not going to treat you as bad as I treat everybody. What kind of shit is that, my nigga, for real? Like, where did we get, when did we break our moral compass so badly that we think north is south and south is north? That's bullshit, my nigga. That's that shit. You know this for a fact. Like, if I'm financially successful, I'm like, hey, man, why don't you go shop here? Hey, man, try this. You can get what you need. Hey, man, they got film equipment over here, cuz. We've been doing that since we was in fucking we met in kindergarten, became tight in first grade, second grade, third grade. And so, like, we've always exchanged ideas. It's never like, that nigga don't even know that because he won't. Even if you don't get it, and I don't get what you're talking about, you still present it to me because you want me to be aware of this shit. And then I decide how I feel about it. You know, I'm not trying to control you, but I damn sure am not going to sit here and try to bypass my homeboy and just, like I say, I'm better than him. I don't try to sleep with your ex-girlfriends. I don't do that shit. You know, I don't know. To me, I think it's really gay to try to put your dick someplace else and somebody else put their dick. I don't want my dick residing in the same place that your dick resided. But some people, that's how they feel that they elevated themselves. Like, hey, I can get his girl. Hey, I fucked a couple bitches you fucked. Now we're equal. Like, how are we equal in life when, you know, I got my degree the first time. I graduated high school. I work for. I have properties. You know, so a lot of this shit are superficial rituals that people do to make themselves seem elevated, and these superficial rituals are what was guiding these Kabbalistic, as my brother put it, Kabbalistic religions and how these secret societies are all boule bullshit gatekeepers. That shit. This is the shit that we talk about every episode, and every time. Oh yeah, all this shit ain't related. It's all fucking related. There's no way in the world that all these major religions talk about usury is illegal, but then you got one people willing to do it. So they've already sold their soul, and then they sell the soul of the whole community in the wake. You have whole industries. We constantly talk about the music industry being evil, worshiping Satan, Luciferian rituals, and all that bullshit. But these same people who corrupted the church, who corrupted all these different religions, are corrupting this industry. Those same people are the ones that are doing the same, playing from the same playbook over and fucking over. Why do we fall for it? Why do we let them have that position? That cabal shit, that's some real shit. Please be mindful and watch that shit.
Andre Harrell was the music executive at Uptown Records that mentored Sean Puffy Combs. Combs gained more influence and was later introduced to Clive Davis. Sean Combs would go on to mention Davis as a mentor in many award show appearances and interviews. Andre Harrell, gay. Clive Davis, gay. Sean Puffy Combs, gay. People in Hollywood would often refer to the gay mafia. The same exists in the music industry. Those same people have dark art worship tendencies. They're practitioners. The Baphomet situational ethics that was mentioned earlier by the Vatican. The same Vatican that is connected to the five families in Italy. It was recently revealed that Sean Combs was the frontman investor of an alcoholic beverage company that is controlled by one of the five Italian families. Combs had a major disagreement with an Italian family. Then he begins to have legal controversy that began with Cassandra Ventura reporting him for sexual abuse and human trafficking. So out of nowhere, this guy starts having all these problems. Just magically appears.
When he decided to sue his handlers, when he decided to sue the white man, is when all of a sudden he had all these issues. Now, I am not condoning his behavior. He had been doing that behavior for decades, 20, 30 years at least.
He had learned it from Andre Harrell and Clive Davis.
Yep. And here's another part, just so we can clarify what we're saying. There are a bunch of rappers who've had sex with Clive Davis just to further their careers. There are a bunch of rappers who had sex with Puff Daddy just to further their careers. And I'm talking about male rappers. I'm not talking about female rappers. Let's make this, when my brother just told you about the gay mafia, that's what we're talking about. That these people give up their buttholes just for them to move up. Yeah, man. That's not moving up to me. That's not the
But what's happening right now, as we record this episode, their legal battle that is going on between Cassandra and the law enforcement versus Sean Puffy Combs. And so what they're focusing on are the small parts of this story. This entire thing is a smokescreen.
He's not charged with anything major. The reason, also, this is something that Roscoe always talks about. This is a distraction. All these people are talking about all the dastardly stuff Sean Combs, not Puffy, Diddy, whatever, Sean Combs did over the years. People are talking about those on the witness stand, but he's not charged with any of those activities. He's charged with three things: sex trafficking, heading a criminal organization, and a gun charge. Chances are he'll get the gun charge and everything else is in question. Second, black people. I'm sick of y'all talking bad about Cassie and talking bad about the girl from making the band. So let me explain this to you, because black folks, my partner, he understands it. You're not allowed to have sex with your subordinate at work. Cassie was smart enough. She did not sue Puffy over rape and all this other crazy shit. She sued him for sexual harassment. Why did she do that? Because she was his employee. She was on his label. You cannot have sex with somebody that works for you. when she filed the $30 million sexual harassment suit, the head company, I want to say Arista, but I might be wrong, so please forgive me. I don't want to give the wrong record company. They asked Sean Combs, hey, did you have sex with her? He's like, yeah, that's my bitch. They was like, you can't do that. So they told him to pay. I think he paid $20 million, and in the hotel where she got beat up, they paid her $10 million. So she made $30 million. Now she's a witness in this trial. Now everybody's saying, oh man, she was in for it. None of that matters. She's not being charged with the freak offs.
But this is the problem though. All of the attention is being pushed towards her. Yes, that is a narrative that's being managed. Money is doing that.
That's victim shaming.
That's no. More than victim shaming, that's gaslighting. That is money that's being used to control public perception.
That is the pure definition of a narrative.
So then what's happening is they're actually paying people to post. They're creating bots that will post and make these fake ass posts.
I don't think they even need to do bots.
No, they do, because you have to make it seem like the common person is against her.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think they need to. Black folks have been oppressed for so long that we get mad at other black folks for speaking up. And people don't understand is that she has a new husband. He probably advised her. But the reason I brought up the old girl from making the band, during the show, she started sleeping with Puffy. And everybody's like, all the people that were in that show making the band, all these black men, one of them from New Orleans, this is what I mean by gaslighting, and you're so used to being, man, she was down for that. She wanted that life. You don't get to sleep with your boss. If somebody is your boss, they can't. How many times have you seen these guys say, like, hey, I didn't start dating her until we stopped working together? Because they were the boss, and they know that that's frowned upon. And a lot of these black guys, the ones that have huge platforms, they all fell over for sexual harassment.
But what's crazy is that there's no discussion at all about what happened a decade before with the death of Biggie Smalls and Tupac Shakur.
2 decades before.
Mm-hmm.
But yes.
And how that's the same guy that's involved in both of those people's deaths.
Well, here's the part. Remember, they literally said that he was going to be charged with the Biggie. Everybody, that was the rumor before he got charged with these 3 crazy little charges. And like I said, hold it. Let's clarify. The reason we're bringing this shit up, this shows that this pattern that's been used by a certain sect of people. This is just one of those examples. We talk about Epstein, we talk about Puffy. They had the exact same behavior, and the only reason that they're so important is because they documented everything through video. Puffy has videos of all his bad behavior, but he has videos of other people's bad behavior too, and that's probably what's saving him.
Okay,
all these people.
But here's the thing: there's other people in this stratosphere. Now we can come back to the Puffy Combs thing, but Michael Jackson and Robert R. Kelly. Both of those people have had altitude sickness.
I'm gonna tell you like this: R. Kelly, yeah, Mike talked out against everything, and I
no, but his altitude sickness came from his strange associations with children, though.
Hold it. He was never found guilty of those. And him and Prince, I think I don't think they belong in the same category, but I think the other thing that me and you talk about off the air that's very important, they're making the black man the face of sexual harassment. That was their goal. That these black men, even though, like you said, Harvey Weinstein had a much broader reach, and Harvey Weinstein had fucked with more
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. But even to this day, they're not the face of sexual harassment. R. Kelly is. Now, hold it. I'm not saying R. Kelly.
But see, here's the thing, though. Jeffrey Epstein and R. Kelly had the tendency of messing with underage women.
Period. There's no denying it. All I was saying with Mike was,
But see, here's the thing, though. R. Kelly peeing on motherfuckers, and he's a pedophile. That's altitude sickness.
Hold it. This goes back to what his brother said.
Listen, there's a part of altitude sickness that we need to discuss. So as you rise up and you experience, the elite and these, parts of society that most people don't get to see, you're around people who don't have normal sex anymore. You're around
Okay.
people who don't just drink alcohol or just smoke weed anymore. You're around
Look
people
at
who
Vince
are doing
McMahon.
designer drugs. You're around people who are into weird bondage, BDSM, strange shit. And
Hold it.
peeing on people, that's some BDSM type of shit.
But hold it. I said, don't leave out Vince McMahon. See, like I said, this was my
See, there
problem
you
with how.
go. Vince
This is
McMahon
my problem.
clearly had altitude sickness.
This is my problem with how the media makes the black man. They charge
Explain
$5
who
black.
Vince McMahon is.
Okay, Vince McMahon is the guy that ran wrestling for 40, 50
What
years.
was the name of the company that made him the most money in the beginning?
Oh, when we were kids, it was called WWF,
WWF, the
Wrestling Federation.
World Wrestling Federation,
But
which
but
became
but it became
WWE.
E, which became World Wrestling Entertainment.
But it's still
He was
WWF to me.
hold it. That's another conversation. But he was still the head of that industry, not just the head of the company. He was the head of the industry, and he had been paying off sexual harassment claims for decades. Again, I keep trying to tell people you cannot have sex with your subordinate. So he was. Well, he had a young intern who sued him for $3 million. When he stopped paying, that's when she went public. And she went public because he was shitting on her, having sex with her, literally shitting on her head. That was part of it. So what I'm saying is these white men have perverted behaviors, but they're not the face of sexual harassment. They're not the face of that. But they, and the reason I brought up Michael Jackson got in trouble for hanging around little kids. If you pay attention, he did change his behavior. It was later on when these kids' parents realized, hey, this is an opportunity. All them little boys who are in their 30s and 40s now are telling you, Mike did not do that to me. My mom and dad put me up to it. That's
I know,
the
but the
difference.
part about the altitude behavior is the
Oh
fact
no,
that
no,
he
I
had no childhood. The altitude sickness, he
oh
had
no,
no
no, no,
childhood.
no,
And
no.
so he's stuck.
I got what you're saying.
What this, okay. This is what happens. If a person is forced into adult situations at an early
Too soon.
age,
Too
that
soon,
part of their
yes.
brain stops growing. And they're
It- it-
always in that part. They're always in this perpetual state that where they were forced into an adult. If a person leaves home at 14, you're always going to have the mental state of a 14-year-old. Even though you'll have adult experience, you'll still
Sometimes,
at the core of that still be a 14-year-old.
hold it. This is a deep conversation my brother's trying to explain to y'all. Uh, Look at people that are abused. Look at people that are injured. A lot of times their development stops at that point. Now, eventually, sometimes it starts back again. Like when a person goes to prison, then when they come back into
Or
society,
they can do psychedelics and it can help to cleanse a lot of that. But Michael
that's true.
Jackson is an example of a person who had arrested development.
Yeah, hold it. Well, I was just referring to the fact that not all abuse is physical, but you've seen people get out of prison. Some people can rehab and get going, but most people when they first
Yeah,
get
but his
out,
father had him chemically castrated. That's physical abuse.
hold it, God. See, you talk about so many. First things first. Mike was abused by his own brothers in the sense that him and Tito was forced to hide under the bed while the brothers was having sex with these women. They were forced to see their father have sex with these girls before they were given to the brothers. They saw that. So Mike loved his mom, and that shit fucked with him. Later on, his parents had him chemically castrated so he could sing better. That fucked with him. Later on, he was burned up during a Pepsi video.
Jerry
That
Curl caught on fire in
caught fire
1984.
from pyrotechnics. So what you got to understand, all these different things messed him up and stunted his development. Then later on, when Mike became powerful, he did some shady shit, but then he realized, okay, fuck that. Mike bought all those people's music rights and gave them back to the black families of these dead artists. That pissed white folks off. When he started,
Hold on, you say he did some shady shit. What are you referring to?
okay, say, let's be specific. I think he did some shady shit when he was, like you said, when he was hanging around kids. He went to Japan and had a big deal with this Japanese company. He takes the 14-year-old son of the CEO out and gets the son drunk. Now, the son said he never touched him, but the fact of the matter is you cannot take a 14, 15-year-old kid out and get them drunk. Mike was more comfortable around children because, as my brother just stated, his development was still stuck in childhood. He was hanging around kids because he still felt he was a kid, and he's in his 30s and 40s. That's shady behavior. Now, all these kids came out and said, Mike never touched me. And Mike didn't. A lot of the stuff my parents told me to say, but still, he did. You can't. Roscoe, I can't come to your house, grab your kid, take him out, get him drunk,
I
and
kill your
they're
ass.
not open
I
from
kill you.
one. Yeah, but that's my point. So he made some mistakes, but I think that he kind of grew up and finally got some help and figured some shit out. But the bottom line is he's not the same as Puff Daddy, who was a willing participant and was still participating in this behavior up until he got arrested. That's not the same thing. But the altitude sickness is real. The fear of falling, the weird sexual habits, and again, all these people were abused by somebody else. Everybody we named that was black that we know for a fact was abused by somebody else in the beginning, and then instead of them getting help and attacking the abuser, they found somebody else to abuse. Whether they were abused through contracts financially, whether they were abused through sex, whether they were abused in the fact that I hired 50 Cent's baby mama to do some fucked up
But
shit.
why do you
I'm paying her.
think Vince McMahon's story is not as big as the Puffy Combs story?
Because, you already know because he's white and he's a rich white man who's a billionaire. Don't ever get it twisted. He just sold the company for like $12 billion about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, to TKO, who owns the UFC. Um, the bottom line is R.Kelly, millionaire. Puffy, millionaire, close to a billion. But Vince McMahon, billionaire. Harvey Weinstein, billionaire. How about this? Here's what frustrates me, because Cosby was a billionaire too, because we forgot about to bring up Cosby. Um, how could I forget the most obvious guy? So when Dave Chappelle talked about Cosby, he said I don't know this for a fact, but during the March on Washington, Cosby was allegedly the one who paid for the PA system so everybody could hear it. Cosby did a bunch of good. I'm not dismissing the bad that he did. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is I think it's odd that I can't see the Cosby Show right now. I want my kids watching the Cosby Show right now. I want my kids watching Roseanne, which were
Or
family
Little Rascals,
comedies.
because he bought that shit.
So that's my point. It's odd that we never stopped watching Miramax movies because of Harvey Weinstein was groping women and forcing them to have sex. We never got, it wasn't the same. Even Puffy, let's be honest. We stopped listening to R.Kelly for about 6 minutes, but Puffy, none of his music stopped. None of his money stopped. He's not making what he was because as we got older, we realized Puffy made money initially from music industry, but he made more money from alcohol and other things that he was into. He had branched off, but that's the whole thing that when you're black, you're always going to be a nigga. You heard those terms, you don't understand what they mean. That's what they mean. That you don't have the ability to rise up against your colonizer. If you speak up against your colonizer, you'll either be killed, discredited, or defamed in some way, shape, or form. That's the difference between these black. You can't find the Cosby Show anywhere. I can't. I want to see Leonard Park 6. I want to see The Devil and Max Devlin. I want to see all.
Hold on a second. Before the Cosby stuff, was the Cosby Show on in syndication anywhere?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. The reason I remember because I don't hold it. Cosby was very protective of his rights. He didn't just show the show anywhere, but the Cosby Show was available at a couple different networks, and then that shit completely disappeared. You also got to remember Cosby did Different World. He also did the Roseanne Barr Show. Cosby was responsible for a lot of these different shows. So you can't find them shows anywhere. That's my beef with how Cosby and R. Kelly was treated. Another thing, R. Kelly had lost the rights to most of his music because of the different sexual harassment suits. Aaliyah's family was still getting money off I Believe I Can Fly. So R. Kelly had already mortgaged himself to the hilt already. But the point I'm making is that Jeffrey Epstein, for example, we know he was Mossad. We know Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. We know they was Mossad. We know that they ran that McGraw, the company that does textbooks for kids. So when you found out that all these guys were sexually harassing, doing all this nasty shit, did we stop using McGraw as textbooks in America? No, we didn't. So how come black people are punished so much more harshly than white people when it comes to the same crimes. And I'm not condoning anybody's crime,
But dude,
but I
listen,
know that.
listen. The the whole McGraw Hill textbook thing blew my mind when I
Oh,
fucking heard, when I fucking heard that shit. Blew my mind, dude.
no, that's not okay. I'm laughing. I'm not making light of the situation. I'm laughing because
It's
Rob
like
told
one
me.
of those situations in a ninja movie or anime movie when the bad guy is like revealing some crazy plot twist, and then you see the main character's face, and it's just the deer in the headlights looking. They're like, no. I
Luke,
mean,
I
it's
am your
Luke,
father,
I am your father type of shit, dude.
nigga. Second
Star
grade
Wars.
me. You must understand. Second grade me. And when my homie came
You know,
back and
it's
told me
odd as
that,
those books always had a very unique smell to them.
oh, yes, they
They
did.
smell
That's
like
true.
Doritos.
No, moldy Doritos. It had a little moldy, salty smell to them. But I digress. When Empire Strikes Back came out, and my homie went to go see the movie. The homie that's sitting next door to me told me, Darth Vader's Luke Skywalker's dad. No, he's not. No, he's not. Like that,
And then you saw it
dude.
for yourself, and then you were equally shocked.
Confused. No, it wasn't just shock. It was confusion. Like,
But see, but here's the thing. Let's go back to Bill Cosby because we just skimmed over his whole
no,
situation,
we didn't.
and we didn't
We-
give
we-
people historical context about how
yes,
Bill Cosby rose to fame. He was a stand-up comic on not the Chitlin circuit, but on the white circuit, and he
yeah,
was
yeah.
doing Ed Sullivan, and he was doing these big TV shows on white
He, he
America TV.
he did the opposite of other black comics. He did the opposite of Red Fox. He did the opposite of Richard Pryor, who both came out at the same time. He did the opposite. Instead of going, all those guys were considered blue. And hold it. Let me clarify. People forget Richard Pryor was just like Cosby when he came out. Richard Pryor became blue
Yes, but
later on.
Here's the thing. What's so funny is that they both came up at the same time.
Same time,
And
same
then
comic.
and then he tries to call Richard Pryor to tell him how to run his life. And Richard Pryor tells him to go fuck himself, which then he tries to call a decade later Eddie Murphy and do the same thing. And then Eddie Murphy calls Richard Pryor, and Richard Pryor tells Eddie Murphy to tell Bill to go have a coke
Have
and
a
a
coke and a
smile and shut
smile.
the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up.
So what's so funny though is that everybody talks about Richard Pryor as an influence. Nobody talks about Bill Cosby as an influence as a comedian. They talk about
We're talking
Richard.
about white. I'm sorry.
Listen,
Go ahead.
listen. They talk about. I'm not the black comics too. They
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
what I
Bill
said.
Cosby as this moral authority type of guy. Come to find out, he was a total piece of shit because he had altitude sickness of the worst kind.
So,
Because
okay.
here's the thing, he also had special Negro syndrome. He
Okay.
had
Come on.
Boule
Hold it.
syndrome, and he was straight
Oh,
up.
God
He was
damn
the
it.
Boule of the Boule. Rest in peace, Steve Coakley.
Here's where it gets crazy. Even black folks nowadays who are there are black folks that when I sit here and say Bill Cosby's Boule, those people all agree with me. They're like, yeah, it's clear. I'm like, what? Wait a minute. You just said that the cure for cancer
But
is
dude,
is
you gotta understand when we first found this out in the very early '90s, that
mhm,
shit
mhm.
was a mind blower. When we were
Oh,
watching this on VHS tapes, and Steve
yes.
Coakley is up there at some HBCU or some fucking black vegetarian cafe, screaming about the Boule and talking about Bill Cosby is the fucking head and chief HNIC, dude.
When he talks about Jesse Jackson, he talks about Al
But no, no, no,
Sharpton.
no, 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 no. When he talked about Bill Cosby, that was the
Wait.
one. Because see,
Oh,
y'all got to understand what is happening at this time. Public
this
Enemy
gatekeeping.
is bringing out this revolutionary music, and this. See, okay, before you had these Hotep clips on Instagram and Facebook and all this bullshit,
Yeah.
all you
TikTok.
had was black bookstores. That was it. You had black bookstores and hip hop music. There was nothing else.
Hold it. We had this underground movement where we would get tapes and we would distribute the tapes to people we loved. So I'm in college. If I got a tape, I would give it to Roscoe. If Roscoe is down in Atlanta, he had a tape, he would give it to me. And that's how the movement was so underground that it was like playing telephone with tapes. Like, remember, like you would tell me a secret and we keep going with. That's how these tapes were. That's why these tapes were so grainy, because they were copies of copies of copies. but but the information was so important that we had to get it to, like, hey man, I just seen some shit. You got to see this shit, cuz. That's how we function. And that's what I was saying about our childhood and how we've been friends for so long, that whatever you were into, you presented to me. And whatever I was into, or whatever I found out, or whatever information that came to me, I'm giving it to you. It was never a gatekeeping. There was never, Roscoe ain't gonna get this. I don't give a fuck
No,
if
no,
you
no,
get
no,
it.
no, no. Because there was no need to translate anything. That was like, check this shit out. Bottom line, hey man, look at this shit.
Nigga, I thought you were gonna give me something. Nigga, yeah, take this out. But what I'm saying is, we never had gatekeeping. Now we have friends that are children of gatekeepers. We have friends that are gatekeepers because it's in their blood. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then when you
The crazy part about that is they were trying to gatekeep shit that we already knew, shit
no,
that we put them onto.
No. That's it. That's what they try to gatekeep shit I brought to them. The shit that we put them on, they try to gatekeep. But hold it. Again, let's go back to that boule term. So I was talking to my friend, the one who starts with an N. You know what I'm talking about. Now, his wife teases me about the whole conspiracy theory stuff. But when I said Cosby's boule, they both indubitably agreed with me. But then our two friends whose dads are gatekeepers. You know who I'm talking about?
I got it. Blue and gray.
Yeah. And so, but when you talk to them about gatekeeping, they make excuses. And I'm like, that's crazy. And here's the crazy part. Like, when you talk to their dads are actually real. I don't talk to W's dad as much, but every time I have, he's actually been straight. But when I talk to the color guy's dad, that nigga's gangster. And it's like, how do you have a gangster ass father and you're such a bitch? But that's another conversation. But the gatekeeping, the secret society, the secret handshakes, the you're not good enough yet, the you must cross the burning sands, as my brother put it last time. The I'm not going to present this information until you prove yourself. There is a need for people to be mature enough to understand stuff. That's the tough part. But why do I get to decide when you've met that level? That is the altitude sickness that we talk about. That's the shiny Negro, like that's the nigger. The term that I use with me and my wife is niggerachi, and my wife started saying it, and her homeboy's like, "What's niggerachi?" She's like, "A shiny nigga." What do you think it is?
Oh,
It's
you
a
mean
nigga
like a black Liberace?
Yeah. And so I'm like, so I started using that term. That's what drives me crazy when my wife steals my shit. But she started calling these certain niggas niggerachi. And I'm like, yeah, don't you? They're shiny niggas. It's superficial. You put diamonds on dog shit, as your dad would say. You know what I'm saying? But that's what it is. You can sign them up, but they still are damaged. And that's what we see with the Puffy situation. That's what we see when you hear Ice-T say, I started pimping people because I was pimped. That's what you start seeing when people are in this music industry. And instead of elevating people, they sit here and abuse them to the same degree that they were abused. R.Kelly. Again, why is Vince McMahon, and don't get me wrong, they made whole documentaries about Vince McMahon, but they ain't take his money. They made whole documentaries about Vince McMahon, but they still bought the company for $8 billion or $12 billion. So trust me, it's not, you don't have the same effect. Black folks are damaged beyond repair if they decide to do what white folks do. When white folks do what white folks do, it wasn't that bad. He did a lot of good. He helped a lot. Like, you motherfucker, he shit on a girl's head. He pooped on her head, then passed her to the homeboy, so he could poop on her too. This is documented. And the only reason it came out is because he was supposed to pay her $3 million in restitution, and he stopped paying. He paid her $500,000, paid her another $500,000, then paid her $600,000, and then stopped paying her, and stopped paying for her apartment, and stopped paying for her car. That's how we got here. Because if he had just paid her the $3 million he was supposed to pay her, we wouldn't have known about him sitting on the bench. We wouldn't have known. So you must recognize when the oppressed try to oppress or try to stop the person oppressing them, they are treated differently. And then they, on top of that, this is the altitude sickness we're talking. They're afraid of falling. They don't want they don't want their transgressions out there.
And then you become R.Kelly, Michael Jackson, Puffy,
Bill Cosby, keep going.
Bill Cosby, the fallen ones.
I just think, okay, I know we're about to wrap this up, but let me give you an example. How come Bill Cosby, Michael Jackson, Puff Daddy, and R. Kelly, excuse me, those are cautionary tales. But Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Vince McMahon, those are not cautionary tales. You're like, people still admire them motherfuckers. Do you see the difference? Niggas, like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. White folks, it wasn't that bad. Not that bad at all. Do you see the difference? How the cautionary tale is not, and the cautionary tale is not for everybody. It's just for other niggas. They don't want black folks behaving like these black folks. You see what happens to them, but you don't hear white folks, hey, you see what happened to those rich white men? Still rich. Still shitting on people. I'm not giving a fuck. Epstein is the only one who, again, he didn't commit suicide. Whatever. Who the fuck cares? That list is still not coming out. We still don't know everybody that went to the island, but we know one thing. Bill Clinton went. Excuse me. We know certain things. And that's why this altitude sickness is so important for you to recognize and not be a part of it. That you shouldn't fear growing up, but you're afraid of falling down. I have no problem falling down. I don't want to fall down. Me and you started from scratch too many fucking times. I don't want to, but I'm not afraid of it. If it happens again, I will find another job, start investing, and I'll be hungry as a wolf. I'll get it. But you can't sit there and fear falling that way, because if you fear falling, you start stepping on people just to stay where you are. That's not okay, my nigga. That's fucked up.
Well, there you go. Altitude sickness. It is a real thing, as we have just outlined. There are people who get into these positions of power and they rise too fast, and they don't think that nobody is watching them. They don't think that, they'll get caught for any of these things they're doing, or that, they could have to answer for these things. But there you go.
Phobia is real. Beware of falling.
That's all I got. We out. Peace.
Holla back.